Fear is not the opposite of fluency. Fear is the wall between you and fluency. And today, we're going to talk about how to climb it. Not go around it, not wait for it to disappear, not pretend it isn't there. Climb it. Directly, deliberately, one handhold at a time. Because here is what I know after watching thousands of English learners struggle with this exact problem. The fear never fully goes away before you speak. Read that again. The fear never fully goes away before you speak. Every person who has ever become fluent in English, every single one, spoke while they were still afraid. They didn't wait until the fear was gone. They didn't wake up one morning and suddenly feel fearless. They felt the fear, they recognized it, and they spoke anyway. That decision to speak anyway is the entire difference between the people who become fluent and the people who stay stuck. And today, I am going to show you exactly how to make that decision every time, in any situation, no matter how afraid you feel. Let me start by asking you something honest. What specifically are you afraid of? Not generally, specifically. Because fear is not one thing. Fear of speaking English is actually a collection of smaller, very specific fears. And when you can name them clearly, they lose power over you. So let me name them for you. The first fear is the fear of making mistakes. You're afraid that you will say the wrong word, use the wrong tense, mispronounce something, and that the mistake will expose you, will reveal that you are not as capable as you appear. The second fear is the fear of judgment. You're afraid of what the other person will think. Will they lose respect for you? Will they see you as less intelligent? Will they tell others? Will they secretly laugh? The third fear is the fear of going blank. You're afraid that mid-sentence your mind will empty completely, the words will vanish, the silence will stretch, and you will be standing there, mouth open, nothing coming out, completely exposed. The fourth fear is the fear of your accent. You're afraid that the way English sounds in your mouth will mark you as an outsider, that your accent will become a barrier, that people will struggle to understand you, or worse, will judge you for where you come from. These four fears, mistakes, judgment, going blank, accent, they feel enormous when they're unnamed and swirling together inside your head. But when you separate them, when you hold each one up to the light and look at it clearly, something interesting happens. You realize that every single one of them is built on a false assumption. Let me show you. The fear of making mistakes assumes that mistakes are bad, that mistakes mean failure, that mistakes are something to be avoided at all costs. But we already know from everything we've discussed on this channel, mistakes are not failure. Mistakes are the mechanism of learning. Your brain literally cannot build fluency without them. Every mistake is your brain recalibrating, getting closer, learning what works and what doesn't. There is no other way. There has never been another way. The fear of judgment assumes that people are watching you closely, evaluating you, waiting for you to fail so they can form a negative opinion. But here is the truth about human nature that will set you free. People are not thinking about you nearly as much as you think they are. The person you're speaking to is thinking about what they want to say next. They're thinking about their own problems, their own day, their own life. They are not running a detailed analysis of your grammar in the background. And the few people who would actually judge someone for speaking imperfect English, those people's opinions are not worth the fear you're paying to avoid them. The fear of going blank assumes that silence is catastrophic, that a pause is a disaster, that emptiness in a conversation is unacceptable. But silence is a natural part of every human conversation in every language. Native speakers pause. Native speakers lose their train of thought. Native speakers say, "Give me a second," and "What's the word I'm looking for?" and "Hold on." Silence is not failure. Silence is thinking. And thinking is not something to be afraid of. The fear of your accent assumes that accents are problems, barriers, signs of inferiority. But accents are not barriers. Accents are identity. Every single person on this planet speaks with an accent. The British accent, the American accent, the Australian accent, the Indian accent, the Nigerian accent.
None of these is the correct accent. None of these is the standard. They are all simply the beautiful human fingerprint of where a person comes from and how their mouth learned to shape language. Your accent is not something to be fixed, it is something to be owned. 4 fears, 4 false assumptions. Now let me give you something practical, because I know that understanding something intellectually and feeling it in your body are 2 completely different things. You can know logically that your accent is not a problem and still feel your heart rate spike when you open your mouth. You can know logically that people are not judging you and still feel the cold grip of self-consciousness in your chest. So the question is not just how do you think differently about fear. The question is how do you act differently despite the fear. And that requires a system. I call it the fear ladder. Here's how it works. Fear is not one size. Fear exists on a scale from 1 to 10, and the biggest mistake English learners make is trying to jump straight from 1 to 10. They avoid speaking completely and then force themselves into the most terrifying possible situation, a presentation, a formal meeting, a call with a client they've never spoken to before. And when that goes badly, as it often does because they skipped every step in between, they use it as evidence that they can't speak English, that they're not ready, that the fear was right all along. The fear ladder works differently. You start at the bottom, where the fear is manageable, where the risk is low, where a mistake costs you almost nothing, and you climb one rung at a time, building evidence, building confidence, building trust in yourself. Here is what the ladder looks like. The bottom rung, speak English to yourself. This is not embarrassing, this is essential. Talk to yourself in English while you're getting ready in the morning. Describe what you're doing. Narrate your day in your head. Read out loud from any English text, a book, an article, an email. At this level, the fear is almost zero. There is no audience, there is no judgment. There is only your voice and the English language getting comfortable with each other. The second rung, speak English in low-stakes digital situations. Comment on an English YouTube video. Write a short reply in an English forum. Send a message in English on social media. Now you are using English with real people, but asynchronously. You have time to think. You can edit before you send. The stakes are low and the fear is manageable. The third rung, speak English with online strangers, language exchange apps, online conversation groups, video calls with English speakers around the world who are in exactly the same position as you. Now you are speaking, in real time, with real people, but people who have no connection to your daily life, people whose opinion of you carries no long-term consequences. This is where the real training begins. The fourth rung, speak English in low-stakes real-life situations. Order something in English at a shop, ask for directions in English, make a small transaction at a hotel, at an airport, at a counter, in English. These interactions are short. They have a clear beginning and a clear end. The other person is not evaluating your fluency. They just want to complete the transaction and move on. But every single one of these interactions is a rung on the ladder, another piece of evidence that you can do this. The fifth rung, speak English in meaningful real-life situations. A conversation with a colleague, a discussion in a meeting, a phone call, a presentation. By the time you reach this rung, you have already spoken English hundreds of times, in dozens of situations, at every level of difficulty. Your brain has enormous amounts of evidence that speaking English does not kill you, that mistakes do not destroy you, that silence does not define you. And the fear, it is still there, but it is smaller now, because you are bigger. That is the fear ladder. And I want you to think right now, where are you on it? Most of you are probably stuck somewhere between rung 1 and rung 2, practicing alone, writing occasionally, but avoiding the real-time, real-voice, real-people situations that actually build fluency. Decide today to climb one rung higher than where you are right now. Just one rung, not 5 rungs, not to the top, one rung. Find one situation, one specific concrete situation that is slightly more challenging than what you're comfortable with right now, and do it this week. That is the whole instruction. That is the entire system in action. One rung this week. Now I want to talk about something that nobody in this space talks about honestly enough of. Fear of speaking English is not always just about English. For many of you, and I say this with complete respect, the fear runs deeper than language. It is connected to something that happened in a classroom years ago when a teacher humiliated you in front of everyone for getting something wrong. It is connected to a moment at work where you tried to speak and someone interrupted you or finished your sentence as if you were not capable of finishing it yourself. It is connected to years of being made to feel that your intelligence, your actual intelligence, your ideas, your insights, your wisdom could not be fully expressed because the language you were expressing it in was not perfect. That pain is real, and it deserves to be acknowledged. Because when fear of speaking English is connected to those kinds of experiences, it is not just nervousness, it is protection.
Your brain learned from real, painful evidence that speaking English in certain situations leads to embarrassment, dismissal, or shame. And so it is protecting you, keeping you quiet, keeping you safe. But here is the thing about protection that keeps you silent. It costs more than the thing it's protecting you from. The embarrassment of a single moment where someone dismissed your English, that was painful, that was real. But the cost of staying silent, of not speaking up in meetings, of not expressing your ideas, of not connecting with people, of not advancing in your career, of not becoming the person you were capable of being, that cost is paid every single day, for years, for decades. The protection is more expensive than the risk. And recognizing that, truly feeling the weight of that, is often what finally breaks the pattern. You realize that the fear has been keeping you small, not safe, small, and you are not meant to be small. Let me bring this home. Speaking English without fear is not a destination you arrive at. It is a practice you commit to. Every single day, in small ways, in big ways, in comfortable situations and terrifying ones, you practice choosing to speak anyway. Not because the fear is gone, but because you have decided that what is on the other side of the fear is worth more than the temporary comfort of staying quiet. The conversation you could have, the connection you could make, the opportunity you could take, the version of yourself you could become, all of it lives on the other side of the fear. And the only door through is your voice. So use it. Use it imperfectly. Use it with an accent. Use it with pauses and mistakes and moments where you forget a word and have to start again. Use it today, in whatever small way you can, because every time you do, the fear gets smaller and you get bigger. That is the whole game, and you are already playing it because you are here, you are listening, you are choosing to grow. Now take that same energy and speak. I'll see you in the next video.